Must be a Tuesday. All right, here we go. For the tube, say what up, tube.
What up, tube?
Hi, tube.
What up, tube?
Which camera should I be looking at? You guys have so many
that
here.
one over there.
That's
you.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, and last but certainly not least, for the pod. Ready?
In 3.
3. Add insurance into their existing businesses. All right. And as always, we have another ready to go rock and roll awesome show for everybody here today. Y'all ready for this? Here we go. So many real estate agents out there are excellent agents, talented, skilled, and can help their clients buy and sell their homes in a heartbeat. So many of these talented agents sell real estate. I wrote insurance. Sell real estate until they're dead. But unfortunately, they don't have an exit strategy. Today's guest is passionate about making sure that when it comes time to pull the switch on the real estate game, he's got a way to retire comfortably. Learn from our guest as he tells us about his passion for building apartments and buying multifamily properties, land construction and development, and how he is building his nationwide empire. This empire will get him out of residential sales and owning over 1,000 apartments, all the while building homes for the less fortunate through givebackhomes.com and Agents for Change with Sotheby's. We're excited to bring this guest on the show today from Pacific Sotheby's and Brennan Real Estate Group. Please welcome to the show the man himself, Mr. Justin Brennan.
Holy crap. I was about to say, right? Is my head supposed to explode or what? Thank you for the intro. That was very kind. I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
That's what the
delay
15-minute wait was.
I'm supposed to have like fireworks shooting off my.
Yeah, we have
we have some soundboards, but what we realized is you can hear them on like Facebook Live and on the videos, but they don't come out on the audio only version.
Oh, okay, good.
So we're gonna learn how to play with the soundboard.
We'll figure that out.
But anyways,
welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm excited. I watch you guys all the time, and I love your guys' energy and what you guys do, and I'm stoked to be here. So thanks for having me.
Isn't it funny how quiet he is like prior to the show? Like, James,
this guy?
James, yeah. Nothing. And then boom, the mic goes on and like
all of a sudden,
energy all the way up.
He talks. He speaks.
He speaks. All right, Justin, I've been excited to talk to you once we hit the record button because we've already been having quite some fun. I got to know a little bit about you, and I kept having to shut up and not ask questions. So now I get to ask them, dude. So a little bit about your background real quick. Like, how did you decide to get into this whole commercial aspect of building apartment buildings? How did that start off?
Well, born and raised here in San Diego, grew up kind of a son of a developer, some kind of second or third generation on it, and learned from my dad, ground up. I mean, I grew up on his job sites, digging ditches, laying pipe, like for no other reason other than he just wanted to kind of make us lay pipe and dig ditches and then teach us the value of a dollar and hard work. Didn't know that until later because you bitch all the way through it.
Of course.
Until you finally be like, oh, that's why
I got blisters on my hands and dirt
right?
on my socks.
So learned everything from the ground up, from land planning, right? We all see that, subdivisions, whether it's single family, going all the way into the multifamily space of condos, apartments, etc. All throughout Southern California. My dad also did some stuff in Idaho, in Boise, Sacramento, and then Las Vegas. Built a bunch of apartments in Vegas back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then came into Southern Riverside County. Did a bunch of stuff there before the balloon decided to pop in 2008 and 9 for everyone.
So I got a question about that because we were kind of talking a little bit before, and your intro kind of stated how you want to build a portfolio with 1,000 doors, basically, right?
At least. Yeah.
That's
goal. That's goal one.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
That's goal number one.
I got a question about that.
And we were kind of talking. All right. So, anyways, so my question is, we're like over 10 years out from the last major bust, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so my concern has always been, a market correction. Do I think it's going to be as bad as the last one? I don't know. I have no crystal ball or anything, but I do know that having or being over leveraged is really difficult to stay afloat once markets do shift like that.
Yes.
What are you doing to like curve that in any way? Like, does that even pop in your head as you're going from building to building? And
that's why I don't build things to sell things, so I don't get caught, right? Because a lot of people, that's what happened, unfortunately, to my dad, is he was very, very good at making a bunch of money in his life, and he did. But because he as a developer, he was in the building part and would always build condos and sell all the condos, build all the homes, sell all the homes, build the apartment building, sell the apartment building, right? At 72 years old now, he's wishing, and I keep like, oh, why didn't you just keep a piece of the apartments, right? And only sell 80% of it and keep 20% of it, right? And just because that was his mindset, which is a great mindset because there's huge pops, right? You make a bunch of money, but what you're not thinking of is exactly what you just talked about. Because the best position for you to be in when markets, shit hits the fan, if you want to call it that, is you want cash flow and you want as low leverage as possible. So apartments and any kind of, rental income type properties, as long as your leverage point is not exceeding 65 to 70% of the value, then as, markets tank, right? Let's say you have higher vacancies, not a problem, but your break-even point's low enough and your loan-to-value ratios and your debt levels are low enough, you can ride through it.
You can absorb like a 30% hit,
that's right.
Still be even.
And then you ride through it. And then you tell all your investors, hey, we're just going to ride through this. And then we know there's an upside. But what I want to make sure of is, number one, we pay our mortgage. Number two, I don't lose your money. And number three, we're ready for the upside when it comes back. Because you can never predict the next cycle change. We know it's going to happen. We all know it's coming. Now, based on history, typically every 5 to 8 years, you have a short-term credit cycle. Every 50 to 80 years, you have a long-term credit cycle. If you look at where we're at today, right, in 2020, stock market-wise, we're literally coming into our 10th year of a run. Stock market. Mm-hmm. Real estate started February 2012. So we were literally coming into 8 years on that. So historically, 5 to 8 years on a real estate cycle, we're there.
Yeah.
Which tells you, depending on where we're at with the Trump effect and elections and stuff here this year, I would be just completely flabbergasted if we made it through 2021 without a cycle change. I'd be shocked.
And I'm thinking along the same lines, although I thought it was going to be more like 2018.
We all did.
Right. But, and we've got 2 years of still hot. I mean, I talk to real estate agents every day and, I'm part of a lot of groups and we're seeing homes
low
with
inventory,
multiple offers, and that's one of the indicators that you don't see in the MLS.
Keep in mind, but it's not going to see, that's the trick, is the next cycle change will have nothing to do with what the last one was. Because the last one was subprime mortgages, right?
You mean the trigger?
Yeah, real estate took us into it.
Yes.
Right? Well, that was the last cycle. But real estate's not taking us into this one. It's going to be a currency crisis.
Okay, elaborate. What do you think on that?
Debt levels around the world are through this exuberant levels, right? You got 30 trillion coming up in America. Europe's even worse. China, Russia, they're all bad. We're actually the best of the worst.
You're talking about like a hyperinflation type situation?
Not necessarily hyperinflation, but you're going to have something's going to happen currency-wise, right? Economies and currencies that is going to mess some things up. I don't know how that's going to happen, but it all makes sense because they're printing. I mean, we're printing like 4 billion a day, right? Like it's crazy. We spend 10, we make 6, we print 4, like in the United States. And all they're doing is they're printing. It's the craziest thing. The Treasury's printing 4 billion to pay the interest on its own money, to then print 4 billion to pay the interest on its money, to then print 4 billion. So it's like a big ass Ponzi scheme
cycle. Yeah.
And they can do that right now because the US dollar, we're still the world's reserve currency. Right? That's the only way we can print the way we can. If that changes, party's over.
That's scary.
So let's hope that doesn't change anytime soon.
Yeah, let's hope it doesn't change anytime soon.
But it's a great experiment. It's a great experiment because all the banks, central banks around the world are doing the same thing. So it's not like we're like the worst. We're actually the best of the worst. So when it goes, unfortunately, it may affect a lot of people. And then I think it'll be bad, but then you'll have a currency adjustment. Something's going to happen, and then away we go, and we'll come right out of it. Rock and roll. So
we're getting pretty deep into what woulda, shoulda, coulda happened, right?
Sure.
How do you, what are you doing to prevent that? And like, what kind of education did you kind of decide on or learn about that put you in a situation where you're like, this is my plan of action. This is what I'm going to do.
Well, I went to undergrad at Pepperdine which was amazing. Came back home, rather than go to work at my dad's companies, I wanted to go kind of make it on my own. So I did that for 2 to 3 years, and then said, hey, I wanted to go to grad school. And that was the trigger, right? Because for me in grad school, what I learned there is I just paid really good attention. And what I noticed was, all the kids and all their parents and their families. And I noticed that whether it was a doctor, whether it was an attorney, whether it was whomever, right? Totally different professions outside of real estate. But they all had one common denominator.
They owned real estate.
They owned rental income property.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting there going, doctor, attorney, this, priest, all these different, they're not real estate people, but behind the scenes in their portfolios, they own real estate and they cash flow those things. Cash flow is the key, as we've talked about, dividends and cash flow and money, because that allows you to ride through
Any
the
ups and
recessions.
downs.
That's right.
Well, it's
And
also a place to park it, right? Like
Yeah.
we talked a little bit before the show about Rich Dad's cash flow quadrant, right?
Yeah.
We're about the E, the S, the I, and the B, right? And what you're talking about there is people in the E and S quadrant. They make a lot of money. They're professionals in whatever space they are. They do have high incomes, but what do they do with that income? They
Right.
got to put it to work somewhere. So they kind of either passively or actively jump into the I quadrant, to the investor quadrant, and this is where they're buying the rental real estate.
Yeah.
You're doing that too, but you're kind of building a business on the side of it. Like you're trying to develop on the B side as well as the I side. What are you doing there?
Right, because the B side is the apartment business, right? It's a business. And then the I side is we still invest passively with other, syndicates, right? Other apartment owners, other builders and developers that we can trust. We'll invest with them. We also invest in Peer Street and Lending Club. Do you know what those two are?
No.
You got to look those up. So peerstreet.com and then lendingclub.com. Great way. You can get in for as little as $1,000, right? Or whatever you want, but $1,000 minimum. And Peer Street is essentially a large syndication where I can go in and anywhere in the country, I invest $1,000 or $500. They'll take it and they're making, 8 to 9% on the money. They're taking 2 and they're giving the investor 7, right? And it's super conservative. You can check your level of risk, whether you want to be super risky, medium, or low.
Is there a specific investment that they're doing?
They're doing all real estate based.
Okay.
All real estate based, and it's all debt based. So meaning you're in a leveraged position on that debt. So it's pretty cool. Just go check it out, peerstreet.com, because we started investing in that just passively, right, as a company, Brennan Pulley Group. And then we also did Lending Club, which is consumer debt. We're investing in consumer debt. But that's why you see
That
right
would
now.
scare me.
No, different types of consumer debt. Not like credit cards. No. Like people, think about all the businesses. Think about all Cabbage.com and all these companies out there that are just throwing money at businesses right now. Get funding in 5 days, get funding, all this stuff. That's all backed by Lending Club. So Lending Club goes out and throws out all this money, but it's in a way leveraged against receivables, right? Against companies that are actually making revenue and money and have products. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, hey, I'm going out and putting $20,000 on my credit card. I'm not investing in that. We know how that works.
Yeah.
No, it's I'm investing in consumer debt of a business that has receivables, right? And they're getting a short-term loan to do their inventory.
Yeah,
and
make payroll, whatever.
There you go,
do,
and you get paid back, but it's based on real numbers, not.
Yeah, I was gonna say on the consumer side that freaked me out.
But you can check
One
your
bankruptcy and you're
risk.
done.
That's right. You can check your risk level. So once again, but if you check out those two, those are great ways with very little money to get into the passive side of investing in real estate or in consumer side of it. If you don't have 50 or 100 grand to go throw out there right now.
Yeah.
So.
To get into some of these larger syndicates.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about a syndicate in case people don't understand what it is and like how do you start one or get into one. What is a syndicate? Because it's a very fancy word for what.
Yeah, and
it
everybody
actually
freaks
is.
out about it. So and I was telling you before we even came on here that legally and technically a syndicate is any time you're raising money from people, period.
Just
like if I was going to go flip a house down the street and I was raising money from 3 buddies of mine to go in and buy this house and flip it.
That's a syndicate.
Legally, that's a syndicate. But because it's friends and family, we tend to just do an operating agreement and they bring the money into it and we flip the house and we all have our, splits and away we go. But that's done for the basic stuff. But when you get into more sophisticated syndicates where you're buying an apartment building and you're raising $2-3 million, some from people you know, some people you don't. You need to have legal documents in place and certain filing documents with the SEC and states and stuff on a per deal basis to make sure it's done legally, make sure all parties are protected, including investors as well as the sponsors, as they would call us. And away we go. And it's just, it's really a few documents that get put in place and it gets reviewed. And it's essentially the same thing as an operating agreement. That's one piece of it.
Blessed by the state of California, basically.
Or,
you get the seal of approval.
Or any state you're investing in, right? Mm-hmm. So same thing. But it's just a handful of documents that get put together. It's called a private placement memorandum, a PPM, as some people throw the word out. And that has a handful of documents in it that is the offering for the investors.
So is it based on like a dollar amount? Like once you hit like $1 million,
Nope.
Or is it based on the relationship of the people involved?
Usually the relationship, because let's say it was my dad, my brother, and 2 friends. Probably not going to go to the extent of putting together all this, strenuous legal documentation. It usually just be an operating agreement. But when it starts to be a couple layers and distances, right?
Is it because you're soliciting?
Technically, yes. And whether it's, once we can get into more details, but you have what's called a 506B offering and a 506C offering. A 506B offering allows me to connect with people that I have a relationship with. They can be accredited or non-accredited investors. A 506C offering can be really anybody, right? But they have to be accredited. So I can start running ads on Facebook, but we have to vet them and assure that they are an accredited investor, and then they can invest with us. And then I can publicly advertise it, but I can't publicly advertise what they call a 506B offering.
So just real quick, an accredited investor.
Yeah.
How do I define an accredited
Yeah,
investor?
usually you have a net worth of $1 million or more, or I believe you're making $200,000 to $300,000 a year as a family or an individual.
For the last 2 years, yeah, and expect to have it going forward.
Correct.
Yeah, that's because those are some of those qualifications where you're like, why is it that this guy over here got the opportunity to invest in this apartment building and he got an awesome return, 10, 15, 20% on his money?
Yep.
I've never gotten that opportunity. Like the most my broker gives me is like mutual funds.
Sure.
And
but that's why you go
401ks.
in, if you're not at that point where you're accredited and you don't have $50,000 to go put into a deal, Peer Street's a great opportunity for that lending club. Or you can go on Fundrise or some of the crowdfunding sites, right? richuncles.com. And you can invest as little as $5,000 and kind of start there and just dribble into it, right? Until you get the returns. You're just trying to generate cash flow. Right. So where you get to a point that hopefully the cash flow you're generating on a monthly basis will replace the cash flow you're making as an employee or a self-employed person. Because the minute you can wake up in the morning and I know that this month I'm making $10,000 a month,
whether or not you got up or not,
and I'm sitting in my PJs, then I don't need to go to work as an employee anymore. It's a choice. Or I don't need to go to work as a realtor anymore. It's a choice. That's when I'm in the B quadrant. Or the I quadrant, as we were talking about, right? Business owner or investor in that whole.
That's
Robert
essentially
Kiyosaki
you being
thing.
out of the rat race.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's our goal, because if you're in the E quadrant as an employee, then you're essentially gonna follow the line like everybody else. You're gonna work till you're 65 or 70. Hopefully, you accumulate enough wealth in your 401k and your retirement funds at that age to then be able to now retire and have the quote unquote free time to do the things you really wanted to do for the last 60 years of your life. Or if you want to accelerate that and get that earlier in your life, in your 40s or maybe by 50, then you better get into the B or the I quadrant as soon as possible, because there's no other way to do it. You can't do it in the E or the S. It's impossible. It'll never happen.
There's some real estate agents that I've met over the time we've done the podcast, and some of them are rock stars, and they
make a lot of money.
They make a lot of money
On the top.
But and the other thing is, then I see, on Facebook, they're like, oh, it's my 26th birthday, it's my 28th birthday. I'm like, damn, like I hope, you know what I mean? Like when I sit down and talk to them, and I'm hoping that you're investing your time and educating yourself in other things beyond buying that fancy car or that next bomb suit, or you know what I mean? Because if I can go back to the 28-year-old self, right, and tell myself, hey,
don't we wish all, right?
Like what advice can you give young realtors that are just kicking some butt out there, that are rocking it, or even experienced realtors, some of them that have been, in the industry for some time and putting out good numbers and making good money? What advice would you give them?
You have to make a choice whether your goal is to be the top realtor right? And be the famous realtor that everybody knows and sees on Instagram and Facebook, and you're the famous person, girl or guy that's on the surface making a lot of GCI, right? Commission. But at the end of the day, when you actually look at your balance sheet, and I call it not just your bank account, but your balance sheet, what does that look like? Because it doesn't do you any good to go make $1 million or $500,000 in commissions when you spend $400,000 to get it. It's kind of pointless.
It's kind of tough. Well,
but a lot of realtors have to, right? Because you have to spend a bunch of money in this market, unfortunately, as a realtor to make that kind of commission level. So I've just made the decision for myself that for me, my goal is not to be the number one realtor. And it's not because I can't. I just made the choice that I'm using real estate as a catalyst to buy investment property. So that way, within a few years, I can get the hell out. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I've had a tax practice since like 2006, and I've come across people who are broke on two separate ends of the spectrum. I've had people who are broke and they make $50,000 a year, living paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And I've met people who make $250,000 a year, just as broke, living paycheck to paycheck.
Well, it's because standard of life goes up, right? As we all know, right? You go make $250,000 or $200,000-300,000. All of a sudden, that standard of life goes up with it, and then it's tough to get out of that standard of life because now you probably have kids, family, spouse. Everybody's kind of feeding off the machine. Yeah.
But it blows my mind because I mean, both are broke, right? Yeah. One broke looks fancier than the other one.
Sure.
Right. But both are one paycheck away from like financial catastrophe. And it scares me, especially in the sense that, we've just had, in my mind anyways, I'm 38. So in my mind, we just had a big financial crisis.
So you went through it. So I'm 40, you're 38. So you remember the financial crisis and people that had kind of walked through it. I mean, we all still have scars from it, man.
Dude, we got lucky, right? So the very first business I had, James basically had his girlfriend break his heart. He joined the Navy and bounced. And that just...
Deuces.
Right? Exactly. And that just happened to be at the right time where I ended up shutting things down and we ended up selling our properties. And it was right before things went really bad. I happened to get out at a good time.
Good time. There you go.
Right? Not that, business kind of made me go broke, but real estate didn't. Real estate actually helped me, maintain something and rebuild on the way up afterwards. But there's a lot of people who just got devastated and plummeted in the real estate game. But what doesn't get talked about that much is those people who had 401ks who were ready to retire at that right around that time.
Oof.
The market tanked for them.
Yeah.
And their portfolio that was $1 million in stocks.
Bye-bye.
Dude.
Yeah.
But that comes down to what you invest in. Do you have control of this investment or not? Right. Like we were talking a little bit earlier about having control, and you've chosen, like I asked you, are you in the market? And you're like, kind of a little bit. Mostly you're in real estate. Why choose real estate and having apartment buildings over investing in your 401ks or in your stocks?
So I do it all to answer your question, but I put it proportionately to my skill set. So, I have a financial guy that each month it goes into the business 401k. And it just dribbles into it, and then he manages that on a medium risk level. Because I told him, I said, I want medium risk for you. And then I got Northwestern Mutual, right? So everybody, by the way, this is like the secret of all secrets. People think like whole life insurance policies, if they're a permanent life, whatever you want to call them, are bad. No. That's actually the mechanism for truly growing wealth, because you can get it in and it grows, right, tax-free, okay? And then that way, later down the line, you can actually leverage that, right? You
can borrow against it. You don't pay taxes on borrowed money.
Yeah, and he knows the insurance game, so he probably gets this.
Yes, sir.
So all of that. So I have a term policy as well as a whole life policy, and we convert the term to whole every year. We're just moving money into it. So by a certain age group, that's super conservative type investment. Then I got the 401k that's like medium, right, in terms of risk. And then I'm the real estate guy. I can control what I know best, and that is apartments, multifamily, rental income properties, and I can take or set the risk level super or less, right? But I control it.
What's the benefit of having control? Give me some examples of like, why is control so vitally important when investing?
Well, especially in the real estate game. We've all watched enough American Greed shows.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm watching another one. No, you never know who you're investing with. It takes time to build that trust and likability with the people you're doing business with, just knowing that they're going to protect your money the same way they would protect theirs. Mm-hmm. So I know real estate really well. I can run it. I manage it. I went to school for it. I literally have lived it since I was like 2 years old. Like I literally wake up in the morning, I'm like cap rates, cash flow, cash on cash return, NOI, like gross income, like operating, statements. I'm like, oh crap.
So you're a machine.
I'm just like, I just see it in my face every day. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then, I'm a licensed general contractor. So I came up through the construction industry and understanding building, construction, land development, land planning, like all that stuff too. So it's a pretty unique little setup. But in the crisis, I became an asset manager. Believe that? Yeah. That's how I was telling you how I kind of like accidentally fell into residential sales. It wasn't because I like sat there being like, oh yeah, I want to be a realtor. What happened is, my dad's companies, he had to consolidate all those because of the development companies, everything just tightened up. So after I helped him kind of consolidate all that, I had the opportunity with a company called Atlas REO here in San Diego. They were a third-party asset management firm that was managing at the time between 2008 and 2010 most of the major banking institutions in the United States, their foreclosures. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, GMAC, Chase.
Which at the time wasn't very organized, right?
No, it was just chaos.
Horrible.
And the banks didn't know how to manage it themselves, so they would hire these third-party asset management companies. One of them was Atlas REO. So I worked there as an Atlas asset manager for about 2 years. What a learning experience.
That's a whole different other side. I've talked to people who went in the REO business during that time.
I was hiring, Kyle Whistle?
Yeah.
We were hiring Kyle Whistle. Like I was hiring a lot of the realtors, right, to manage the properties, right? Go in, evictions, cash for keys, clean them out, all that process end to end. And we were doing it nationwide. But Kyle was one of our agents here in San Diego. If you're watching this, Kyle Whistle, you're out there, buddy. I know you're watching.
See him on LinkedIn a lot.
But yeah, we were hiring him through Atlas. He was doing a bunch of business. There was a handful of realtors here in San Diego, Riverside County, a bunch. And then we were doing it all throughout the country. There's probably 200 asset managers that worked at the company. But that was also short-lived, right? Because I saw it moving. We knew REOs were going to be here for a period of time, and then you can kind of watch it. Like I'd say late 2009, early 2010, it started to move from foreclosures to short sales.
Mm-hmm. Value's going up.
So now me and my broker mind, because I have my broker's license, I'm going ding, 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 ding. So now the homeowner controls the house. The bank doesn't control it anymore. It's still a distressed property. That homeowner needs help, and they need guidance. Who better to help them than somebody who's on the inside, who's been a asset manager that knows what the bank thinks and how to get it done
to the next level. Yeah.
So we hopped out and I fell in and we were doing an enormous amount of short sales in San Diego for probably about 2 years. And that was 2010 to 2012 until it turned into traditional market.
That's crazy.
But it was, the short sales were just a nightmare, but we were really good at them because I already knew, depending on who the bank was, what type of loan it was, when they originated the loan, whether it was a first or second or third. Like I could walk into the homeowner and tell them like, you're going to get it done or you're not. And if you want to get it done, this is how we have to do it. Like I already knew.
Can you shrink the time frame too? Because short sales were
yes.
They were a long
process.
Yes,
by knowing how to properly submit the package to the right people and then having the right people to talk to inside the bank, right? Because of course there was chaos everywhere. Yeah. And so you just had to have the right connections with the right people and have.
Yeah, they're selling.
I use I use short sale negotiators, right? Because it's better for my time to be out in the field. But we'd have really good short sale negotiators working directly with the people at the banks at that time.
So things are going to be changing soon. I like to look at certain things in the market as indicators as to what's going on. Things like BPOs.
Yep.
Things like the number of offers on a particular on properties, right? Things that are not necessarily mainstream metrics.
Yep.
BPOs on the way up, right? So
are they?
They've been. I get my inbox
because there's 5 key indicators. Do you know what those are?
Show me. Tell me.
So the first one to look at is pending home sales. Right, that's the number one key indicator. Second one is defaults. Third one is foreclosures. Actually, well, yeah, because obviously defaults and then foreclosures follow that. Fourth one is building permits, and then last one is interest rates. So if you watch those in that order, it'll give you a pretty good leading indicator 3 to 6 months in advance as to kind of where we're
an
headed.
idea.
Yeah.
Well, but here's the thing about defaults, though, right? Like, once the default gets recorded, right? Isn't that different than if, doesn't that the bank operate a little bit differently once it goes into default?
Yes.
Right? And so what I've been noticing, or at
Talking
least,
about NOD, right?
Yeah,
Notice of
notice of
default.
default.
Yeah, filed.
So what I've been noticing is banks issuing VPOs prior to going into default to get things ready for that aspect of it.
Well, sure, because they could be at a point where they're 30, 60, 90 days late,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's how it starts. And then the homeowner's trying to play catch up and make it
Which
work.
oftentimes they don't.
And negotiate, and maybe it's a modification, whatever it may be, but they don't get through that. So the next stage is, look, you haven't paid your mortgage in 6 months. I mean, I was dealing with people in the financial crisis that hadn't paid in 4 years.
Dude.
It was unbelievable. They're actually down here in South Bay. I did a bunch of them down here. I was like, man, you've been living rent-free for 4 years? I'm like,
you should have a nice nest egg.
I'm like, seriously? But anyhow, but it was, what I actually got a great joy out of was helping people who were in really tough financial situations, like get through it and then watch like the weight like fall off them. It was really cool. Like, because they got kids, man. These are human beings. They got tough situations for whatever reason they got into it. I mean, we are all part of it, right? So it's just, that was really cool to help those people.
So what do you think? Near future here coming up? Like, do you are you looking at? I mean, you talked a little bit about how you see an indicator. You're like, I'm gonna drop ship on this thing. I'll move over here. Like, what do you see yourself? Are you gonna continue? I mean, obviously, you're gonna continue buying apartments, building apartments.
Yeah, as long as you buy them right. So the first, like, we don't buy. Just one of the rules of thumb, and you can take this is. We only buy C apartment buildings. We turn them into Bs surrounded by As. So I basically want to be Walmart surrounded by Neiman Marcus, JCPenney, Nordstrom, like, because I'm always full.
You buy the ugliest house on the block.
Yeah, but then I turn it into a decent house on the block.
And it's in
surrounded by the nicest houses on the block. Yeah. So I that way I'm always full, because when markets tank, what happens to the people in the luxury game? They have to go down to the B game, right? And so you're full in the good times, you're full in the bad times, because people have to move between the levels. So that's why, I was taught that in grad school. So you said, like, does college teach you anything? Yeah.
In your case, you did.
It taught that, which is extremely helpful. And then you just learn how to underwrite things correctly, certain numbers to look for. Like when you're just looking at a deal, I can tell you pretty quickly whether the apartment is probably going to work or not.
That's crazy, dude. I mean, just the matter of experience that you have in that industry to be able to look at an asset like that. Like, do you have to walk through the apartment building, or are you just looking through?
No, like if, let's say something came across the table and I knew it was a fixer, like a value add opportunity. Let's say it's in Kansas City or San Antonio or outside of California. I'd say, okay, what are the potential rents? Right, I know where they're at now, but what's the potential rent? So, okay, it's $800 a month, hypothetically, and that's in Kansas City maybe. That number, that average unit rent, monthly rent, needs to be greater than 1% of the per unit purchase price. So what I mean by that is, let's say we're buying it for $80,000 a door. What's 1% of $80,000? That's $800. So the average monthly rent needs to be $801.
I look at the same 1% metric when looking at single family residence.
Yeah, and that's a base point.
Oh yeah.
Right? Obviously that just lets you know, okay, should I dive in deeper or not dive in deeper?
Right.
So once that gets met, then you dive into the real data, right? And you got to run your numbers and stuff. But that allows you to kind of see something pretty quickly and go, oh, that's probably not the right opportunity for us.
Yeah, at least to decide up front.
Yeah.
No, I use the same thing when we look at single family residences. We're the same thing. Well, does it meet the 1% rule? Then we keep going. Yeah. Otherwise, it's like, well, let's find another market, because this is not.
And just stick to what you know works. You know what ends up people get into trouble is because they get squeezed and they get to a market like this where it's like, we're so hard to get deals to work. Mm-hmm. So they start then making exceptions, and then that exception gets them in trouble.
Does that mean that you invest mostly out of San Diego? Because I swear.
Right now we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's no 1% rule.
Yeah. No, we only had, so everything we made that decision in 2018. We went out of California. So we're in Kansas City. We're going into San Antonio and then Tucson. The only thing we have here in California is stuff we've already bought. We bought in 2010 and 12.
When it made sense.
Yeah, when it made sense. It actually cash flows beautifully. And then we're in entitlement stages on 19 apartment units in the East County. So that'll hopefully be permitted by the end of this year. But that's just because it got purchased so well. We'll just entitle it and, build it because it makes sense. But it's tough to buy stuff that's existing right now and have a pencil. Unless you're trying to park money. Remember, there's two types of people. There's people just trying to 1031 exchange, park money, preserve wealth. I'm cool with like 3%.
Yeah.
And then you have people that are trying to make money. I'm trying to make money. I'm in a growth stage, so I can't afford 3%. We need to see X. And that just doesn't work in San Diego right now, which is why it's hard.
What are you looking for in investment? Like what's your minimum ROI that you're looking for?
Well, you want to see at least a 2 times equity return for the investors on their money. So, if they're putting in $1 million, we want to see $2 million out of it. That type of stuff. Just when you're looking at basic numbers. But I mean, for most of our investors, they want to see a 15 to 18% internal rate of return, right? Annual rate of return on their money. And if we can give them, say, a 6% pref on their money on apartments, right? They're usually happy with that. And that, because keep in mind, our investors are people who would otherwise have the money in a mutual fund,
right,
or another conservative vehicle, and they're saying, look, I want to diversify $100,000 of that, and I want to put it into apartments, but I don't know how to run apartments, so I have two options. I can either go figure it out and buy my own and trip and fail over myself, or I can invest with people I trust that I know aren't going to rip me off and be on American Greed in 3 years.
Yeah, well, no, I appreciate the advice because I get people that ask all the time, what should I invest in? My first question is always, well, how much money do you have?
Yeah. Which is why I gave you the option of Pier Street and Lending Club.
Right.
Because I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. Not everybody has $50,000 they can throw out there, $100,000 or $200,000 or $1 million. So I say, look, if you got $1,000, start with that. PureStreet.com, and you can automatically invest $200 a month. Right? It's just a backdoor way to invest in real estate. It's conservative. It's another avenue other than putting it into a mutual fund or some bond or conservative stock portfolio, and it's outside of the stock market. It's stuck in real estate, and there's that one or Lending Club. So you can play with a few $1,000 in all those.
Yeah, at least to get your feet wet, because that's one of the biggest things is step number one. Let's get in the habit of putting your money away.
Yeah.
Right. If you can't do that, then we have no conversation on what you're going to invest later in the future.
Even if you're getting a dividend of $50 a month, see, don't think about the dollar figure. Think about the process.
Exactly.
Right? Because $50, you'd be amazed. All of a sudden, then you're getting $500 a month, and then a couple of years later, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm making $5,000 a month residual. I don't have to do anything. Next thing you know, it's $10,000 a month. You're like, well, I'm quitting my
job.
Done. My job. And then, or my realtor position, whatever it is. But you get to that point, and that's what's building now, like for me. And like, I'm like laser focused on it because I only learned the quadrant thing that we talked about, the Robert Kiyosaki quadrant, like 2 years ago.
Really?
I'm like,
I wish I would have known this a long time ago.
Like, if I wish I would have learned this in the financial crisis, I'd be so much farther, ahead. I'm like, man, 2 years ago. So.
Dang, really? That was like, it's funny, man, because you talk about. I asked you about education. For me, that was the first book I ever picked up. I got like almost straight A's in high school, but I didn't read anything really.
I intuitively understood it, but now, like once I saw it,
you can't unsee it.
Now I was like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
Like, now I get it. I mean, I'm sitting here. I need to get, here, now, like ASAP. Unless I'm okay. Unless I'm okay with just going and getting a 9-to-5 job and, maybe
if you're happy, right?
Yeah, maybe make $100,000, $150,000 a year, but just realize that you're going to work that till you're 65 or 70.
Yep.
And then at that point, you have the freedom or the free time.
Yeah, but at 70, I don't know how good you're going to feel at 70 years old.
Just depends.
All right. I know. All right, cool. So I'm getting the producer. All right, so we're going to do a segment called Ask the Bros. So I'm going to ask you to ask us a question, anything you want, personal or business, James or myself or both, doesn't matter.
Yep.
And while you think of a question, I'm going to remind our audience, ladies and gents, tonight, if you guys got nothing to do, 6 o'clock, we're going to be doing Fuck Up Nights. It's in Downtown Works. It's where entrepreneurs come and share their biggest fuck ups. So it's a nice networking event. So come out and check it out. We're going to drop a link here in the show notes. So you guys get your tickets. We'll be in the Downtown Works in downtown. 6 o'clock tonight. See you guys there. Ready?
I'm ready.
Go. Shoot.
I'm curious. Like, so when did you guys actually sit together and say, we're going to do a podcast?
That was July. July will be 2 years.
Okay. And you have a few thousand people that are like, I mean, I see you guys on like all the time. So it's growing.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely growing. It's one of the biggest, one of the greatest things that we've done business-wise.
Why do you follow Gary Vee like I do? Because I know we were talking about that. Yeah, why?
Yeah.
Like, what do you love about Gary Vee?
It's pretty simple. I like his easy answers.
Okay.
Like, there's no complication to his answers. They're just pretty basic, and they're blunt and straightforward.
Do you feel like he's a little all over the place sometimes, though? Like he's like scatterbrained a lot. Do you notice that?
Yeah, but so am I.
Okay.
Right. In other words, it's true though. It's true. I'll tell you something. I'm like, dude, this is what I think you should do. I think you should 100% go this route.
Right.
However, like if you're like this, you should probably go this route. And they're like two extremes, right? Like he gets on my case all the time because, you know, I'll come up and I'll be like, James, dude, I got this great idea. This is the direction I think we should go in with the insurance company. Look, it's gonna go here. We're gonna do this, and this, and I think it's gonna go to this direction. He's like, okay, cool. And he's a very systems oriented guy, so he's gonna turn around and start implementing all the systems. And just as he finishes and starts implementing everything,
You change your idea, don't you?
dude,
Yeah.
this is what we should do. And the problem, the thing he gets upset about is I'm right. Like he agrees with me, but now he has to change all the.
So have you done disc testing? You know, disc testing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you probably C, huh?
You know what? I haven't actually done it.
Yeah, and you're probably a D or an I for sure.
I'm more of an IS.
Are you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
D,
I was gonna say you're
yeah,
social.
I'm
You
IS.
definitely have an I in you for sure.
Yeah.
It's just a question of you're a D or an S. That makes sense. But yeah, if you're saying he's systems, logistics, plan for a plan.
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah,
definitely
so
on
he's
that
a
side.
C.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get an email, would you like that in a list or a paragraph?
List.
Okay, yeah, you're a C.
Yeah.
I'm a C too, so I can relate with you. But I had to convert my the way I operate, because what I started to realize is as a C, it's hard for us to jump out and take risk.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, because you plan, right? And then you plan, then you have a plan for plan, and
Yep,
more plans
yep,
for those
yep.
plans. And then you keep planning, and then you never actually take action. But we all know the difference between, you know, is you got to take action.
Execution,
You can
yeah.
plan, but you got to take action.
Yep.
So sometimes you just got to jump in and let the house show up.
Yep.
And I had to learn that. That was hard because intuitively I'm like, but I had to say, you know what? F it.
Yep.
I'm going. We will figure this out because I'm smart enough to do it. I know we can do it. We got good people around us. We're going to get this shit done.
Mm-hmm.
And we would just jump out, and it would turn out beautiful.
Shoot.
But
Worry about the ready aim stuff later.
Taking that risk was scary as hell as
Yeah.
a C personality. So then that started to move me into kind of that CD, where now I'm kind of like, I'm at A, I want to go to Z. Like, we're going to figure it out. Let's go. And then you kind of more big visionary thought versus C, da, 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 da. Yeah.
I think you like Michael Gerber's book. So it's the E-Myth, right?
E-Myth?
Yeah, the
Okay.
entrepreneurial myth. And he talks about the 3 different personality types in a business.
Yeah.
So he talks about the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician, right? And so the 3 different levels. I'm very entrepreneur mindset. Like I'm very much like let's move, let's go in this direction, let's change ships, whatever. He's very managerial, right? Everything's got to be in its spot.
Yep.
This thing has its place here. This has its place here. This is the procedure for
But
this.
you need that.
You
That
absolutely
keeps your
do.
ass in check.
Absolutely. and then we bring on into the insurance agency the technicians, the ones who
Yeah.
are actually doing the selling,
Sure.
the nitty gritty. And so I think you like that book. Like, if you like the Kiyosaki book, you'll like
Yeah.
the way Michael Gerber describes the business.
I like that.
Makes a lot of sense.
So since you're off camera and we can really see you,
I'm on camera.
Oh,
now.
you are?
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm back on camera now.
So what's your background, like in 30 seconds? Because I want to learn about you.
My background, 30 seconds.
Yeah, you're in insurance. I know
8
that.
years
Yeah.
in the Navy.
Yeah.
6 years in insurance.
Yeah.
Podcast producer.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Just
What's your degree in?
what's my degree? Hard
Hard knocks.
Business administration
All right.
with a focus in finance and project management.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
That's a good background.
Yeah.
that's not too bad.
Yeah.
It worked out.
Yeah.
He was a horrible high school student, though.
The worst.
But once he got into college and he
Well-
knew what he wanted to do, totally different.
So
Great
I was really bad with. I was like middle of the road because I had a learning disability where it was really hard for me to take standardized tests, like multiple choice. So therefore, the SAT was like really hard for me. I had to like double and triple study to get like an 11 or 1200, right? Whereas like most kids are like
No
they're
problem.
like 1600 like now, or now it's like much higher than that. But yeah, so I had to like double time it on the education side, but it was okay because I could outwork people. Like I knew.
There you go.
I was like, I can outwork you.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Like if there are 5 hours in the day,
I'm
I
going
will
to beat you.
Work 25 hours.
I will beat you
Because I will outwork you. So you can be smarter, great, congratulations. But I will be the hare or the tortoise, whatever you want to call that, and I will find a way past you.
And every once in a while, you'll bump into Gary V's, which are the hares, all the way through.
Holy cow! Guys, just I'm like, what are you on every day?
Dude,
So
high
true,
off
so
life,
true.
dude.
High
That's
off
what it
life,
is.
yeah. He's pretty impressive. I watch his stuff. So
All right, Justin.
All right, Gary V, hit us up.
it was a pleasure,
Dude, it was
a pleasure.
fun, man.
It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for coming on
Thank
the
you
show.
for inviting me and having me here and kind of sharing a little bit of the story, and hopefully people get some value from it. So
I hope so. I
think so.
sure
That was
did.
a good one.
Yeah, heck yeah, I sure did. All right, ladies and gents, that's all we got for you guys today. Peace,
Bye-bye.
and we're out.
All right. Thanks, Facebook. We love you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you. Have an awesome night.